Hello everyone, my name is Łukasz Mirosław. I'm the Global Black Belt Specialist for High Performance Computing and AI here at Microsoft. And with me, we have Timo Kistner, EMEA Lead for Manufacturing at NVIDIA. Before we start and dive into the discussion, let's talk about why we are here. AI has changed manufacturing by accelerating innovation, increasing productivity and efficiency. Also by entering into numerous use cases and scenarios in the value chain. Let's maybe dig a little bit into those scenarios and use cases, specifically in the context of industrial metaverse. So Timo, what is NVIDIA role in manufacturing?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. So in general, NVIDIA is all around accelerated compute, right? So everything that we do is like, how can we accelerate workloads? How can we bring those workloads to the next level, right? And the important piece is that you understand that we're not only looking at the chip level, right? But we're all around the full AI stack, right? So there are hardware systems, but on top of that, we are building and providing the respective software tools to orchestrate all the hardware systems, right? But also to have all the libraries, all the software frameworks to develop the actual AI models, for example, right? And to develop the industrial metaverse environment. So that's really important to understand. So most of the work that we do is actually around developing software, right? Like 80% of our developers, they are in the software domain, right? And for us, it's super important to partner with you, right? Because you as a partner, Microsoft, on Azure, you're bringing the full portfolio of what we have to our customers. Now, when it comes to manufacturing, again, we're covering really the full range of things you can do with that, right? Meaning from whatever high performance compute for CAE acceleration, for example, CFD simulations, finite element analysis, things like that, right? Similar in the AI space when it comes to whatever AI workload you can think about. And specifically, of course, when it comes to generative AI these days, right? Like one example, how can we tap into all the different data sources on the shop floor, all the machine data that has never been used before? And of course, then the industrial metaverse, which I guess we will talk a bit more in the next couple of minutes.
Exactly. So you mentioned that in order to be effective, you need to bring together different types of technologies. So it's not only about the compute, but also it's about sensors data, it's about visualizations. So and this is the place where we can actually bring value by working together. So how do you see this strategic partnership between Microsoft and NVIDIA? How the customers could benefit from that partnership?
Yeah. So I think, like I said before, right, we're covering the full range of all the use cases that you can think of when it comes to manufacturing. And exactly when you look into that, right, on the accelerated compute side, combining that, for example, with machine data, right? We had a great example, great demo at Hannover Messe, where we had some robots, some conveyor belts. You provided with Microsoft Fabrics the data layer, using the real-time data, combining that, mapping that into our industrial metaverse platform, which is called Omniverse, right? And there we had the photorealistic visualization, 3D in real time, bringing together the setup of the actual demo, right? Like from all the different CAD tools, together with the IoT data and showing in real time what's the status. And I think that's the important piece, right? Today we're still seeing many different data silos on the shop floor, right? The machine data, the engineering data somewhere, and even the engineering data, if you look into that, there are so many different data silos in there. With the technologies that we bring together to the market, we can combine all those data sources and help the customer get a completely new perspective of what's actually going on, right? Understand how our machine data correlated along the production line, and with that better understand how can I make sure that my machines are up all the time, better plan for maintenance, have higher throughput and so on. This is where we can have a tremendous impact from my perspective.
This is an interesting point, because when we are presenting NVIDIA Omniverse as a novel way to visualize assets, we often hear some questions. It looks great, but what are the real benefits? What are the real KPIs for me to drive this innovative projects?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me talk a bit about Omniverse first, so that we have a common understanding what is Omniverse, right? Because from our perspective, two important things to cover, right? Collaboration and development, right? It's a collaboration and a development platform. Now, where does it come from? Collaboration, I mentioned it partially before, right? Today you have many engineers working in many different engineering tools, and those tools, well, they partially talk to each other, some more, some less. It's very hard to get that information especially in real time from one tool to the other. You have to export the data, clean it up. You might lose data, right? Import it again, and that takes time. You have to wait until tomorrow morning, until the latest mechanics design is ready and you can use that data again. You're losing time, right? With the Omniverse platform, we are making sure that everyone is able to tap into all those engineering tools in real time, right? So we are helping to connect all the different tools out there and bring the data sources and the actual status of the whatever development project into one single source of truth, right? So that's the collaboration side of it. On the development part, well, obviously, if you have a perfect replica of your product, of your production line, of your factory, right, that helps you really understand how do you actually develop this product further, where do you stand with it, where do you have improvement potential, right? And so I think that's really important to understand how Omniverse works, right? So the two things to keep in mind, collaboration and development in real time, right? That's the important part of it. And the reason why we are talking about that is because today we have the technology, right? We didn't have that a couple of years ago, right? A couple of years ago, we were not able to really get that data, see and visualize all the different changes in all those engineering tools in real time. Now we have that because we have the compute behind, because we can scale that compute in the cloud, and because we have a new format, a standard, it's called Universal Scene Description, that helps us bring all those different formats into one single format, right? And again, this helps us bring it all together.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I think that it really shows that you can increase the efficiency of working on the let's say big asset visualization and operations. But do you see any other KPIs that you could mention?
I think the efficiency part is really important one, right? And you mentioned visualization. Visualization is one part of it for sure. And that's basically the starting point, right? When you start with the industrial metaverse today, you start with visualization. We always think in terms of visualization, simulation, optimization, right? And so the visualization part, that's truly bringing together all the different data sources and sort of have a layered approach of those data sources, and with that create a completely new insight, a new visualization. Now, to be very clear, when we talk about visualization, we don't only mean the actual visual object, the asset that you see. We mean the asset as well as all the metadata which is behind. For example, when we talk about a robot, also path planning or something like that, right? So with the visualization part of that, the KPI obviously is efficiency, because as you have a way better visualization, you are way faster in terms of understanding what do I need to change in my current role as an engineer. Now, when it comes to the simulation piece of it, right, obviously that will help us in the future as well to get more and more efficient. It's all around efficiency ultimately, right? It will help us to train AI models in that virtual environment where before we always had to go back and forth between the robot, between the machine, right? Then you realize, oh, wait a second, I don't have all the training data that I have. Well, guess what? You can do that in the virtual environment. You can do that in Omniverse. You don't have enough training data for your computer vision quality control use case. Well, here's a tool that helps you create synthetic data to actually train your AI model again. And you can all do that in the industrial metaverse. That's the benefit of it, all around efficiency.
Exactly, and the other thing maybe that in future we could also see a more responsive digital twin. So right now the telemetry data are providing some insights about how the different assets behaves and interacts with with outside world. But it's not only one-dimensional data that can represent the asset. It's also about simulations, physical simulations that could really tell us what is happening inside the asset in terms of different physical effects.
And I think that's a super important point, right? So far we talked about visualization, 3D in real time, physics-based. Everything that we talk about is physics-based. So when we talk about industrial metaverse, that's the one thing to keep in mind. We're not talking about a game engine that is just visualizing something for the sake of visualizing. It's physics-based, right? And that's the difference to everything that we have seen so far in the consumer metaverse, right? We often get that question, yeah, but consumer metaverse, like how can we leverage that? No, it's about physics-based. So you're changing the properties of a material within your virtual environment, within Omniverse, and you will realize that material will behave differently, right? So that's the important piece to understand.
Exactly. This is also the place where AI could bring a value. We will see some examples, or we are seeing already examples how AI can massively accelerate long-running simulations of physical effects.
Absolutely. And I think that that starts with the actual optimization of the compute behind, right? How do you leverage AI to optimize the workflow of the simulations, right? But also to optimize then the actual simulation itself, right? So there are so many different use cases out there. We're working with quite a lot of software vendors on those topics, right? To integrate the first elements of AI to really speed up all those simulation workloads. Absolutely.
So we see a lot of opportunities for industrial metaverse, but also do you see any challenges?
I mean, the important piece is, of course, data, right? Is it a challenge? Yes, for some companies, for sure, it's a challenge. Where do I get that data from? Is it also an opportunity? Definitely, right? Because the time to start with that is right now. If you don't start right now, well, you might lose compared to the other players in the market. The opportunity is really to leverage those tools and the importance of generative AI, obviously, to create the data that you might not yet have, right? Especially when it comes to the AI side of things, and we mentioned that before, right? We often see that there is not enough training data, not enough historical data that you can really leverage to train models. Well, look, here are tools that help you generate that data, right? And similar when it comes to the industrial metaverse. Of course, you need to have a certain databases. Of course, you need to have a certain base of assets that you can leverage to create your virtual environment. But even there, we have partners, we have tools that help you start your, let's say, virtual factory. You don't have a shop floor plan, right? Today, maybe, right? Some companies have, many companies have, some might not have even the basic plan of their shop floor. Well, guess what? You can draw that in PowerPoint. Here is a tool that converts the PowerPoint shop floor plan into a 3D virtual factory for you, right? So there are the tools out there. I think the most important piece is like, think in terms of the opportunity. How can you leverage that, and how can you make the most out of it today? You can solve the challenges related to the availability of data with the tools that are out there.
Mm-hmm. And this is also a great example. How are you lowering the bar for organizations and engineers to really start experimenting? So it's not only about hardware, but it's also about the whole software stack. Could you elaborate on this?
Frankly, the software stack is the important piece, right? Everything will be software defined at one point in time, right? Think about robotics. Of course, there will always be a physical robot to do something, right? And I'm not only talking about the robot arms, but whatever kind of robots you can imagine, right? But the point is, everything will be more and more software defined. And that's why we are also heavily investing and focusing on developing that software and the framework around it to help, again, together with you, our customers, to accelerate their own development, right? That's a super important part.
Mm-hmm. So do you see any examples of customers implementing industrial and metaverse that you could talk about?
So I mentioned BMW before, right? And there, I think it's really important to, again, think about those steps in terms of visualization, simulation, optimization, right? BMW developed a complete factory, a new factory in Debrecen in Hungary, using Omniverse. Not within Omniverse, but using all the different tools, all the different engineering tools that they also used in the past, and bring that data together in Omniverse. And that tremendously helped them to really understand, how does that shop floor currently look like? How do I need to configure my production cells, my production lines to get more efficient, right? Bring the teams together. That's the collaboration aspect of what I talked about before. Bring the teams together with Omniverse. And again, like, Omniverse is not replacing any other tool out there, but it's making it super easy to tap into all the different engineering tools, combine the data in there, and with that visualize, right? And just by visualization, by photorealistic view on, look, this is how my factory looks like, that already helps you to be way faster when it comes to the design, to the actual engineering of that factory.
So I can imagine that more and more organizations will implement such a industrial representation of the factory lines. I can imagine that there will be more and more digital twins being implemented. And so, but do you see any trends? Do you see any evolution of industrial metaverse? Where does it evolve? And what could be the future? How do you see industrial metaverse in few years?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think it's important again to think about the industrial metaverse. What do we talk about, right? We often get the question like, yeah, but metaverse, that's XR, right? No, it's not, right? XR is just one technology that you can leverage as an output, right? We are talking about combining all kind of different technologies like IoT, robotics, 5G, yes, XR, digital twins, right? How do we bring all those different technologies together? And again, we haven't been able to do that a couple of years ago, right? So I think there is no, like, look, this is the path forward, and it's the same for every company, right? Because every company has a different starting point where they start with you mentioned the digital twin part of it, right? Every company has a different understanding of what is my digital twin today. I think the important piece is really to start thinking about how can I leverage what I already have, how can I bring together all the different technologies. I think it's also important to mention, like, look, this is not a project. This is not like, okay, let's do the industrial metaverse, we're done in 1 year. That's not going to happen, right? How long are we talking about digital twins? 30 years. And it's going to be pretty much the same thing for the industrial metaverse. This will take time, right? You have to start today. You have to start with one part where you say, look, here's some value because I have those data silos and I can combine those data silos now. I get those insights. And that will help me understand how can I leverage that. And from there, I can then go from maybe one production line to the whole factory or whatever to my whole setup, right? And again, it's not just only on the production side, obviously. It's along the full value chain. Now, it's pretty hard to predict how it's going to look like in a couple of years, right? It's going to be an evolution, right? I think it's the integration of all kind of different technologies. It's the integration and the evolution also of digital twins, right? And the important piece, it's going to make it immersive, right? We will really have a completely different understanding by tapping into all those different data sources and get a way better, faster insight in terms of how can we leverage, how can we improve.
So let's assume and hope that we will inspire some of our customers to start their journey into industrial metaverse. What advice would you give them? How efficiently they can start?
I think it's really important to look into where do I have big data sets, tools that do not easily talk to each other, right? Where I could gain efficiency. Where do I need to better understand how are those different machines, or how are those different components in my overall design working together, right? And this is where I should look into and think about, okay, what would happen if I combine all those different engineering tools? Again, there is no standard starting point. There is no standard answer like you always go for this and that topic. Look at the R&D side of things, for example. I myself started as a hardware developer, like more than 10 years ago, right? If I had had a tool like Omniverse, it would have been way easier to understand, okay, wait a second, the mechanics have changed a bit, the housing of my design have changed a bit, so I need to also adapt the printed circuit board. With that, I need to adapt the layout. So like all the 10 people that were involved in that hardware design, well, they would have known immediately, like, what do I need to change in my own part of the design? So it's really like, think about the whole value chain, right? Because ultimately, if you combine, let's say, all the different data sources you have in the R&D, well, that also helps you when it comes to the production side of things. And again, if you combine that also helps you when it comes to whatever operations, service, maintenance of your product with your customer. Think about the whole value chain. Where are the data sources that I could combine? Think about where is probably the easiest way to start for me, and then go for it. Right? You need to start working with it. You need to understand how do you deal with that.
So I guess the preliminary requirement is actually to do homework and prepare the data for future Omniverse projects or industrial metaverse projects. So is this the only requirement in order to prepare for such a initiative, or do you see any other requirements?
I think that's, of course, the sort of basics, right? Like we discussed before. You need to have some data at least, right? But even there, the example that I gave with you use PowerPoint to draw your shop floor, and then you have a tool that creates that first instance of your factory. There are tools that help you with that. I think it's important to, and that's now more on the people side of things, right? It's important to involve everyone in those discussions, right? It has to be driven from the top. Hey, we need to look into that, right? We need to really address this right now. But hey, here's an opportunity for us. And you need to work closely with all the people working in these projects and help them leverage that technology, right? So I think it's really an important piece in that whole puzzle, right? One thing to consider is really like, we're talking about combining different technologies, right? So as a company, you need to think about, okay, wait a second, where are my experts today? How are they leveraging? And for some of these companies, I would guess you will find like, wait a second, there are some experts over here, there are some experts over there. So it's not only about the silos in the tools that we see, but it's also around some silos that we have in the team structure that has built over the years, right? So you also need to think about, how can I bring those teams together? And by the way, with that, industrial metaverse and Omniverse as a platform helps you actually bring those teams together. That's the idea of the collaboration aspect of Omniverse, right? How can I bring them together also from an organizational perspective, right? Because it's going to be everything that we talk about, it's going to be cross-functional, right? It's not only cross-tools, it's obviously then also with that cross-functional.
Exactly. So I think it will be a combination of data and actually people, bringing different people together, bringing different business units together. But it should start with a scenario, with a business case. And this is the place where we can help, because we have a number of customer stories and success stories with concrete KPIs. So this way we hope to inspire some organizations to start this journey. Any final thoughts before we end?
I think, like you said, right, we have that experience. We have the full bandwidth of the tools, and we have the infrastructure that we are able to provide, right? We are able, with Fabrics, for example, to really tap into whatever kind of IoT data, right? I think now is the time to start. Now is the time to investigate, okay, where do I actually start with my journey to the industrial metaverse? And I guess we are more than ready to help discuss that journey with our customers.
Thank you, Timo. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Thank you.
Thank you.